And now we chop. Hey, Jim, I really want to do more to my beautiful $500 four-wheel drive Ford truck, who has been lovingly nicknamed Pluto. Well, I got some plans for that old truck. But today, I'm going to get down to this carburetor issue here. I rebuilt this carburetor a while ago, and it's been giving me some crazy sort of behavior. I first put it back on the car after the overhaul and go to start up, and car ran absolutely beautiful, better than it's ever run. So I let it idle for a couple seconds, well, maybe 30 seconds, revved a little bit, not a lot, of course, but it just was running beautifully. Excellent. Shut her off, come back out, probably 2 days, 3 days later, start her up, she's running great, and I drive out to the road, and I'm going to drive about 1.5 miles or so to a little gas station. And as I'm getting closer to the gas station, it starts running a little weird. Pull in, shut it off, filled up with gas, try to start it, won't start. I smell tons of gasoline coming out. I look underneath the air filter, and there's gasoline overflowing out of the carburetor. So, luckily, I was able to get it home that day. So, I've been kind of struggling. I thought at first I had set my float level, and it turns out I did. I took it all back apart and reset the float level, made sure that the metering rods and the pump and everything were all adjusted correctly, and it's all good. Put it on the car, start her up. I didn't even start it up, actually. I just turned on the fuel pump, and great, it's working great. So, shut the car off, turn it on again, starts leaking like crazy, second time around, after it had sat there with gas in the float. So, I really am starting to think there has to be something wrong with that float. So, I'm going to bust open this carburetor again. You can see I've got it sitting in a bowl because I got a pressure regulator to be able to turn it all the way down to just 1 pound of fuel pressure and see if it was like maybe my pump was putting out too much pressure, and because this car has an electric fuel pump, and it did the exact same thing with only 1 pound of pressure. First time on, when it's a dry bowl, everything's good. About a minute or so, minute and a half into it, starts leaking like crazy. So I'm going to open it up, and I'm going to inspect the float. It's got to be the float somehow. Let me say once again, I do not know what I'm doing. I rebuilt a carburetor when I was 17, and this one. So, yeah. Anyway, at least I have this manual, and I'm going to suspect my problem is somehow it's got to be either this float is leaky or there's some problem with the vent maybe. Why can it shut off the flow no problem until the second try and then floods like crazy? So what I'll do is I'm going to take off this dust cover, these 2 screws. That will expose the top of the metering pins and a piston, and then I'm going to disconnect at least the top of this. I don't know if I'll do the bottom or not. What I'm ultimately trying to do is just disconnect all of these screws here and take the top part here up. So I've got to open that up and then take out, there's like 8 or 9 screws all the way around it. But I have to at least disconnect the top of that linkage and the top of this linkage, I believe. Yeah. Oh, no, not the top. The bottom. That little bugger right there. It's got a little tiny clip on it that you have to pull off, and it's got a lot of spring pressure. And boy, if you let it slip away and it pops, you'll never see it again. So, all right. Try to be careful. Next, I have loosened these set screws right there and right there. That one's for the metering rods. This one's for the accelerator pump. And now that they're loosened, I am going to withdraw this rod here that will release all of this stuff. And then I'm going to pull out this little assembly here that has, where's my pencil? There we go. This one right here. That one has the ends right there, and right there are the metering rods. So we're going to be able to pull all that stuff out by pulling out this shaft right here. There we go. Okay. Now pop them off the end there. So I have slid it to the very top of its travel, and that allowed enough flex in the metering rods to be able to pop them off where they ride on right here. So they are now currently both behind, so I'll be able to allow this assembly here to go back down, and then I should be able to pull out the metering rods. All right, there's one. And let's get that second one. There we go. All right. Now all these perimeter screws have to come out. They're all over the place. There and there. That one has a tag under it. Couldn't find anything wrong. The float does not leak. It had nothing inside of it. Everything looked good on the needle and the needle seat. It's all refreshed. And so now, without putting everything back together, I put the top back on. I'm going to hook it back up to my fuel supply, and I'm going to see if I can make it start leaking again. Okay, fuel pump is running, and I don't see any leakage. Nothing leaking. It's all good. Now, let me shut it off. All right, I waited about a minute. Turn her back on. And leaking. Drip, drip, drip. I have to get a better look at where it looks like it's leaking in there. Okay, I've set the float level lower. Let's try it again. Pump's running. I got no leaks. Pump's been running for 30 seconds. No leaks. All right, I'm a minute in. Not a drop. Okay, I shut her off. I don't see anything leaking at this point. I'm going to give it a minute or so. Okay, try it again. And, well, I think I'm seeing some slight dripping down there. Yep, definitely leaking. But it seems to be less. Okay, so I'm gonna make the float level lower. Okay, maybe third time will be the charm. There we go. First pressurization. You can hear the pump running and no leakage. Let me shut her off. Wait a minute and turn it back on. Third time. All right. I do not see any fuel leaking. I can smell a tiny bit. Okay. I do not see any leakage. Oh, man. Okay. I'll put it back together now, and the float level is way different than what the manual says, but if that's what works, as much as I don't like to say it, I guess I'll go with it. So I'm going to put it back together now, and I'll show you how to adjust some of the stuff. Oh, wait. I see a leak. Oh, yeah. It's leaking right there, right now. Stupid Flanders. Well, that all happened a couple of weeks ago. So I kept thinking about it and thinking about it. And it has to be the float circuit. It just has to be. So I went back to my book, and I'm looking at this picture here, and I took my carburetor apart again and started comparing everything, and then I realized I had been very careful to bend just this little tab here as I was adjusting the level of my float. Then I was looking at it, and on my float it wasn't straight here, it was bent. So instead of being flat, it was like this. So I made it flat, straightened it out, redid the float level adjustment correctly according to the specs given in the book here, and it worked fine. It stopped leaking. So it was this being not being true, this piece right here. That's what caused all the trouble. So as far as adjusting stuff goes, final adjustments when we put it all back together are really all you're going to adjust is the metering rods. And let's see if I can find it here. The metering rods, yeah, here we go. And the pump adjustment. So if you're going to need to adjust your pump, you want the upper flat of the pump arm to be perfectly even with the top of the housing here. And the only way to adjust it is to actually bend this rod. That shows him with a little device on there to actually bend the rod to make the adjustment. And for the metering rod adjustment, you'll have everything all back together, and then you need to turn your idle screw that is on the bottom of the carburetor. You want to turn the idle screw all the way out so the flap on the bottom of the carburetor is completely closed. Once that's completely closed, you reach in and the little slide that the metering rods ride up and down on, that's like the vacuum sensor piston. You have to push that down with your finger to make sure that the bottom of those metering rods are touching inside. They go all the way down and they're touching, and then you tighten the set screw here. And then you've adjusted it properly. Then when you put your car back on the car, then you'll have to adjust your idle speed back up, and that's how you do the final couple of adjustments. Oh boy, this thing got to me. I just never gave up, but it sure took a while. Took it for a drive. We drove it all the way up to North Carolina. We went to Tryon, North Carolina the other day. It still needs a little bit more tweaking. It's not quite perfect, but it's running good enough to drive. So, thanks for watching.